Let's give a few minutes, see if people come in. Ugh. Okay, I don't know why I just did that. Weird. Oh. Okay. See if people come in here. Give it a couple minutes. So. There's one. So. I know I said in Saturday's live that I was going to come back Sunday and finish it, but I had some stuff going on, and I figured, why not just do it today? It's actually Halloween today. It's much better timing just to finish the last half of the book that I started Saturday today. So that's what I'm planning on doing. If you didn't see Saturdays, you can go back in my profile on my channel here and find last Saturday's live, and get caught up. We're just now really starting to get into the main body of the story. Up until now, it's been dark. We're reading Goodbye Halloween Town, based on the Disney Channel movies that I grew up with. Excuse me. Up to now, there's a dark presence that was revealed to be the mayor. Marnie been called back to Halloween Town to try to help fight it. Her daughter got taken for a while, but has been returned now. We've gone to a few different locations in Halloween Town that we've not seen before, including the Whispering Forest, the Whispering Woods, whatever you want to call them, Lake Erie, or the Erie Lake, however you want to call it. So if you want to know how the first half of the story went, go back, watch the first live. But now we're starting chapter 6, The House Spell. We left off where everybody had been put under a spell while they were asleep, and now they can't wake up. And Marnie's trying to figure out how to get everybody to wake up. She managed to get Gwen awake, and the only people awake are Gwen, Marnie, and Marnie's daughter, Emily. So that's where we're at right now. So, chapter 6, The House Spell. Marnie went over and sat beside her daughter and began to repeat to herself again, "Wake up." After what felt like hours, nothing had happened. Marnie was defeated. Did not know what else to do. So actually, yeah, Gwen and Marnie the only two awake. Her daughter's asleep. I messed that part up a little bit. I said, if you joined me last week, I wrote this, but I've never fully read the entire story all the way through in one go as the reader. I've only gone through it all as the writer, so I may forget a few things here and there. And plus, I have dyslexia, so I screw up words sometimes. Stick with me. Bear with me, please. So, Gwen told her to take a break while she tried to wake her up. So she sat beside her granddaughter and repeated the same phrase over and over. Finally, after several minutes, Emily began to wake up. Marnie quickly rushed to her side and hugged her. "What's wrong, Mommy?" asked Emily. Marnie told her not to worry about it, and that she and Grandma needed... I don't know what number you are, I ain't answering you. told her not to worry about it and that she and Grandma needed her help for a minute. Though she was still tired from the spell, Emily was excited to be able to help to do some magic to save everybody. Marnie and Gwen explained to her that they needed what they needed her to do. They told her, and she told them she understood. Emily took a breath and stopped in the middle of the room. Marnie and Gwen watched as she closed her eyes and just stood motionless for several minutes. Emily never spoke a word, but they knew she was doing whatever it was she was able to do. Slowly, everyone began to wake up from the spell that had been cast over them. Tired and confused, everyone began to ask what had happened. Marnie explained what had happened during the night, and everyone was upset that someone could have done this without being seen. Soon, everyone had fully recovered and rebounded from the effects of the spell. They wondered if the mayor could have done this, but Marnie and Gwen agreed that whoever cast this spell likely had created it themselves, and so they must have been very powerful. The mayor knew magic, but she had not been that powerful in her abilities so far. It was also not likely her as if she could have made her way into the house as whatever this was. She wouldn't have needed Ethan to spy for everyone. Everyone agreed Marnie was right and had to be an extremely powerful being. Does this mean the mayor isn't the one behind everything already? Asked Luke. Marnie wasn't sure how to answer the question. However, if the mayor was behind this, why was it so easy to reveal her plan? Was she a pawn for someone else's plan? At that moment, the questions flooded her mind. Marnie began to feel as if they were... hold on. I lost my line here. Feel as if they were starting over completely. Was anything we did worth it? She asked herself, as she sunk into a nearby chair. Everyone continued to gather themselves and regain their bearings after being pulled from the spell. Nothing seemed to be missing other than the spell book. Marnie jumped up, grabbed Ethan by the arm as she pulled him into the other room. Was there anyone else other than the mayor that you were... She couldn't even finish that sentence. Ethan knew what she meant and told her that he was not aware of anyone else helping the mayor. The both of them stood there in silence, for not sure what to do next. Unable to think of anything else, the two of them rejoined everyone in the living room to try to go over what could have happened. Hours went by and not a one of them had any ideas that got any closer to figuring out who was behind everything. Then Marnie remembered something from the mayor's office. "Majestic Peaks," she yelled. Everyone looked confused. "When we were at the mayor's office, she told us not to go up to Majestic Peaks. Even though it sounds inviting, it is actually really dangerous." It took a few seconds for others in the room to realize what she was getting at. "So you're thinking whoever is really behind all of this is up there?" asked Dylan. Marnie shook her head in agreement. They had no idea who would be waiting for them at the top of hold on. Hey. Okay, hold on. Of Majestic Peaks. Or if anyone would be there at all. But it was the only lead they had to go on at the moment. So, for safety, the whole Cromwell family headed out together. Marnie, Gwen, Sophie, and Dylan all gathered what they felt they would need once they were up in the mountains. "Mom," Emily asked, "what about me?" Marnie explained that this was far too dangerous for her, and that she would be staying here with Luke, Ethan, and the others. Seeming to understand the gravity of the situation, she did not fight her mother at all. With that, Marnie gave Emily a hug and a kiss before they left the house. Out on the lawn, Marnie flagged Benny down for a ride. As usual, Benny pulled up and asked where they were going. When they told him about Majestic Peaks, something odd happened. Benny refused to give them a ride. They had all known Benny for years and never knew of him to be scared of anything other than dogs. Yet, for some reason, he was scared of those mountains. Dylan asked what was wrong, and Benny explained that it was on those peaks that he lost his life centuries ago. Gerald, I'm thinking. I mean, it's a decent plot. Silver, it means a very valuable cargo. So, yeah. And of course, the Fitzgerald, the only thing is, I don't think that Fitzgerald ever carried that kind of cargo. Maybe some secret government missions, to explain it. Who knows? But he explained that a dark wizard had been trying to take over Halloween Town after Aggie renounced her throne, and Benny was one of the many locals who fought alongside Aggie to stop them. Unfortunately, Benny lost his life, sacrificing himself to protect Aggie from a killing curse. I'm going to have to change that because that doesn't match up with the 4th Halloween Town film. I don't know why I messed that up so bad. I'll change that part later. But as thanks, she cast a charm over his bones so that he may live forever and serve the town he loved. Gwen stood in awe of Benny's story. She had never heard this before. As with her own kids, Aggie had always been a bit secretive of her past and the royal line from which she came. However, Benny finished his story and apologized for not being able to take them this time and drove off. Marnie looked at Sophie, who seemed to share the same thought. Without saying a word, the two reached in their pockets and pulled out 2 small brooms. As they opened their hands, the brooms grew to full size. Dylan realized what they were about to do and quickly told everyone, "I'm riding with Marnie." Sophie looked shocked and told him that she had learned to fly much better since the last time the two of them tried to fly to warn their mother about Cal. But Dylan did not care. He refused to ride with Sophie ever since. So Marnie and Dylan mounted one broom, and Sophie and Gwen mounted the other. And with that, they were off, flying over Halloween Town. They all looked down at the view, and they could see Town Square, which looked odd without the big jack-o'-lantern. They could see all the way to Witch University to the north and Sinister Industries to the south. Taking the sights. Come on now. Cooperate, computer. As if they would not see it again, the 4 of them seemed to memorize every little detail of Halloween Town. Marnie noticed the cinema where Calabar had cast the limbo spell over Aggie and Gwen. Sophie pointed out the shops where they went to get the ingredients for Merlin's talisman. They could see Gort's house, and they could almost smell it as well. As they flew beyond the city, they looked out ahead of them at the mountains in the distance, standing large and ominous over all of Halloween Town. They were at the right distance that they almost vanished when you were on the ground. It was as if an invisible presence was always watching over the town. But as they came closer, something odd began to happen. Their brooms began to lower themselves back towards the ground. No matter how hard Marnie and Sophie tried to get them up in the air, they just kept going lower and lower. Eventually, the brooms became so low that they were of no use to even have out anymore. And so They all landed and put away the brooms. They'd gotten as far as the base of the mountains. Now they had to hike their way up. The top where they needed to go was a full day's hike away. They knew they would have to set up camp somewhere, and Marnie wondered how they would make a camp. However, Dylan was prepared and showed everyone that... There we go again. Where was I? That he had what they would need. How did you know? Asked. It pays to read everything you can when you have magic, he replied. Marnie looked at him and said, your nerdiness finally pays off. Then the two exchanged a sarcastic look as brother and sisters do. With everything they needed, the group set off up the mountain. Finally, following a small trail that was almost hidden from lack of use, its only resemblance to a path being the one that had obviously been carved out by a recent hiker to the area. Whoever or whatever was at the top must have had the same trouble the Cromwells had getting here. Realizing that must have been the case, Marnie had a thought. Quickly, she tried to cast a small spell, but nothing happened. Then she tried a few more, all to no avail. She realized that nobody could use magic anywhere on the mountain. She told the others, and soon Sophie and Gwen had both tried, to no avail, to cast some small spells. Don't you understand what this means? Marnie asked everyone. They just looked at each other, confused. Marnie explained, if there's no magic here, they can't use magic either. They can't hide under disguise or spell. They must face us directly, and we can beat them. They realized she was right, but how exactly would they beat whoever was waiting for them? Then Gwen had a thought. She asked Marnie if she had the amulet. She said yes, so Gwen told her to put it on and use it to make one of them do something, see if that works. Marnie pulled out the amulet, put it around her neck, and looking at Dylan, she told him, jump on one leg. And sure enough, Dylan started jumping, uncontrollably. Realizing she did have some magic, she made Dylan do a few more demeaning commands before Gwen told her to stop. Marnie then quickly tucked the amulet into her shirt as she started back up the path. They walked for hours, struggling to climb over the ever steeper path before them. Slowly, the sun began to set over Halloween Town as they reached a level area on the path once again. The group decided to set up camp there for the night, and they would continue the journey to the peak in the morning. As they finished setting up camp, they turned and looked out over town and the sunset before them. The sun was almost gone, but there was just enough light that had bathed Halloween Town in the perfect mix of orange and red tones. Oh, god damn it, fucking computer. None of them, however, had ever seen the town as beautiful as it was at this moment, and none knew what the future would hold for everyone after they faced whatever was waiting at the peak. As the sun set, darkness fell over the creature world, and the group turned in for the night. They tried to prepare their minds for whatever may come tomorrow. So whenever I look up discovered. Yeah, I don't, you just have to work on the book the best you feel. If you feel it works, keep writing. As the sun rose the next morning, the sounds of Halloween Town coming alive for the day were carried on the wind up the mountain. Marnie noticed how clear everything sounded and realized that must be how whoever is at the top has been listening to everything, even without magic. The group quickly packed their campsite and prepared to begin their hike once again. Gwen told everyone to make sure they had everything and nothing was lost or missing. Sophie said she had everything, Dylan said he had everything, but Marnie was frantically searching for something. "What's wrong, Marnie?" Marnie explained that the amulet was gone again, that she had gone to bed with it around her neck and now it was gone. Then Sophie held it up and said that Marnie had rolled over during the night and it came off, so she put it in her bag for safekeeping, and it wasn't lost at all. Marnie was relieved when Sophie told her and handed the amulet back to her. She again put it around her neck and tucked it into her shirt. With everything in order, the group set off up the mountain once again. All day they hiked up the mountain, stopping only when absolutely necessary. The closer they came to the peak, the harder the climbing became. Then they reached the most dangerous part of the climb. Passing through the clouds, gray and storm-filled, the clouds were very dense and hard to see through. You had to feel your way up the path. Everyone held hands as they walked slowly through the thick clouds. The sounds of rolling thunder and flashes of lightning off in the distance. After what seemed like days, they finally broke through the clouds and were back in the clear. The peak was now in sight ahead of them, and they noticed what looked like another campsite at the top. With new purpose, they hurried as fast as they could up the mountain to the peak. As they arrived at the top, where the campsite was, they saw nobody around. Then they noticed a cave on the side of the mountain. Dylan pulled out some flashlights and they set off inside. The cave seemed to spiral back down the mountain, as if the mountain was hollow and the entrance was at the top. As they climbed down, it began to open up more and more. They passed by large stalagmites, large open chambers. Then they heard a noise up ahead, so Marnie used the amulet and demanded whoever was there to show themselves. Everyone was in absolute shock by who walked out from deeper in the cave. Chapter 7. An Old Foe Returns. "Cal, how is that possible? I defeated you years ago," Marnie said shockingly. Cal was older and a little disfigured from their last encounter. Otherwise, he still looked the same as he did the last time they met. Marnie asked where her spell books were, and he showed her both books. They were a little beaten up, but otherwise unchanged. "You want them? Take them," Cal told her. "They won't do you any good up here." Marnie asked what his plan was this whole time, and why he had used the mayor. Cal told them that he had intended to finish what he started so many years ago, but Marnie cut him off, saying that she had heard the same sob story too many times. How they were tired of being subjugated from the other realm, living like outcasts. Cal didn't know what to say to that. Were they finally seeing eye to eye on this? Marnie explained that he may be right, but he's going about things the wrong way. She told him how she opened the two worlds to each other, and creatures weren't feared in the human world anymore. They had the ability and the choice to go between the worlds at any time. But she still wondered why Cal had done what she had done. Why Cal had done what he had done. Why did he use the mayor? Cal told him the mayor had no control over her actions. He put a spell on her once he realized he could not use magic while on the mountain. Gwen became upset at this and told him that he ruined the life of a great mayor, one that was even better than his father, Calabar. Cal knew she was right, but there was nothing that could be done now. The town would never trust her again. Cal seemed to show some sense of remorse, but there was nothing that could be done. Having seemingly sorted everything out much easier than expected, they all set off through the cave to find their way out. The path that came up here was far too treacherous and steep to go down. The cave was the only way down. That is, if there was a way back down through there. Marnie and Cal led the way as he had already been down in these caves and obviously found his way out. Marnie was there to make sure he didn't try anything suspicious. As they walked past chamber after chamber, each one a bit bigger than the one before, but it was the tunnels in between that were so small they could barely fit through. Taking deep breaths, sucking in their stomachs, each one of them slowly eased their way through the tight openings. As he passed through, Cal slipped from Marnie's grip and began to run from them. But he was not prepared for what she had for him. "Stop," commanded Marnie with the amulet, and its power forced Cal to halt mid-stride. "How is this possible?" he asked. "Magic doesn't work here." Marnie walked around to him and showed him the amulet. "A piece of Cromwell family magic I picked up in college." He had no idea what the amulet was, or how it did what it did. Halloween Town always held secrets. Secrets only a select few would know, and many that were likely taken to the grave with those who did know. As for the amulet, it seemed only the Dominion had known until Marnie used its power to stop them. Once out of the cave and back outside, the group set off away from the mountain down another path they had not seen when they came up. As they walked, Marnie kept trying small spells to see how and when their magic would return. She knew that once that happened, Cal would become much stronger and harder to control. Each spell she did was done as to not alert Cal that they had regained their magic. She thought perhaps this would give her time to cast a binding curse on him and prevent him from escaping. For a while, none of the spells worked, but then, out of nowhere, a spell worked. Its effect was strong from the repressed magical powers that had been blocked by the mountain. And everyone was scared when they realized what happened. Marnie had been performing the binding curse on trees as they walked, and one tree snapped in half when her powers came back. With Cal and everyone stunned by the sight and the noise, she quickly used it to bind Cal so he could not escape. As he fell to the ground, he tried to free himself from the spell, but couldn't. And so he only flailed around as he struggled. Marnie then cast a levitation spell so they could move him with ease through the thick of the forest. After walking for a while, they finally came to a clearing. They took this opportunity to get out their brooms in order to get back to town faster. Everyone mounted the brooms as they had when they first left. In order to safely bring Cal with them, Gwen cast a levitation spell of her own, creating a dual spell that she and Marnie would use together. And with this, they all lifted off back for Halloween Town. As they reached Supposed to be town, not two. Gotta make a few edits here and there as I read. Joys of writing with dyslexia. This was supposed to have been proofread by somebody I knew, but apparently they didn't proofread it well enough. As they reached town, they landed downtown with all eyes on them. Putting their brooms away, they stood Cal up and headed for the mayor's office. Once inside, they walked straight into her office. Nobody tried to stop them, out of pure shock of seeing a man bound by magic. "What is this?" asked the mayor as they came through the door. "Madam Mayor, this is the real person behind all of the happenings around Halloween Town," Marnie told her. The mayor was perplexed. She had been the one doing everything. How could this man be the cause of everything? The mayor could not understand how she possibly could have been under someone else's control. She swore she acted alone. She had no clue what was going on now. What was real, what wasn't? What was she responsible for? What was he responsible for? The mayor slumped into her chair, unable to speak, as more and more questions filled her head. "What should we do with Cal?" Marnie asked the mayor. She explained this is not her place to declare guilt or innocence. That was the duty of the council. Marnie was surprised. She had not dealt with council since she was allowed to take the creatures to high school in the mortal world. She asked the mayor again what they should do with Cal, at least until the council can decide his punishment. The mayor told her about a secret jail below the courthouse. She explained that it had been chanted to block the powers of any magical being that was placed within its bars. Marnie asked why they had not used them in so long if they had them. Hoodwinkle explained that during the dark times, many innocent witches were locked up in the jail without reason. When the dark times finally ended, the people of Halloween Town voted to remove the jail. But because of its enchantment, it could not be destroyed, so they buried it under City Hall, and it was never spoke of again. It became a classified topic that only the mayor and council were made aware of. Marnie didn't press the issue, though she thought of what could have been done with so many she had fought over the years. Calabar was mayor, so he would have known and had prepared for that outcome. Cal may not have known, however, but he went into hiding before he could be charged for his crimes. And the council made their decision public when Marnie defeated Mr. Dalloway, who was a member of the council, and the Dominion were imprisoned in a witch's glass and turned over to the authorities. Ugh. There had not been need for the jail until now. Marnie realized that she recalled all of the battles she had fought in her past. With that, they all escorted Cal through a secret passage in the mayor's office. Hoodwinkle walked over to a bookshelf. Oh, shut up, Scam Likely. Okay, some sentences got mixed up here a minute. Hold on. I'll have to fix that later. Hoodwinkle walked over to a bookshelf and pulled out a small book. And the case opened to reveal a spiral staircase down under the office. It was dark, and nothing could be seen past the first few steps in the staircase. The mayor waved her hand, and it all lit up, revealing a staircase. The staircase continued down seemingly endlessly. They began down the stairs, not knowing where they were going. So they could no longer That's supposed to be eventually. Hold on. Eventually, they could no longer see the top of the stairs, and yet they could not see the bottom either. Then she stopped and placed her hand on the wall. Tracing a familiar pattern with her hand, the bricks began to shift. As they rotated and shifted position, they revealed a passageway. Dark, the hallway seemed to enter into an abyss. A single lit torch hung on the wall as they entered. Grabbing the torch, the mayor told them that only her and Marnie would be able to lead Cal into the cell, as there was an enchantment that only allowed 3 people to pass, the prisoner and 2 guards. Without thinking, Marnie agreed and began to walk Cal into the darkness. Soon they were out of sight of the others, but still had not found the cell. After a short time, they rounded a corner and came to a dead end. "Where's the cell?" Marnie asked, confused. The mayor turned to Marnie with a new look of malice in her face. She waved her hand, and suddenly Cal was free. "Thank you. You played that very well," he told her. They gave each other a smile, then shared a kiss. "Do you really think I was under a spell?" Hoodwinkle asked. "Sorry to tell you, but I'm the one actually in charge. All of this was my idea." Marnie was shocked. How could she have trusted her? It was then that the mayor pushed Marnie into the cell. She tried to cast a protection spell, but it was too late. The cell had suppressed her powers. She realized she didn't have her amulet, and without the amulet, she was helpless. She had nobody with her to help if a fight broke out here. All she could do was repeat in her head, "I need help." Knowing she could not fight back, she just sank to the floor defeated, still repeating the need for help in her mind, but nothing happened. She was too far from anyone for that to work. As Hoodwinkle raised her hand to cast a spell on Marnie, she was stopped. Cal had grabbed her arm and kept her from cursing Marnie. The mayor turned, shocked by Cal's act. Marnie looked up in disbelief. Why would he help her after everything they had been through? "Don't touch her," Cal told the mayor. "What are you doing?" "We had a deal," Hoodwinkle replied. Cal couldn't explain why he had to protect Marnie. As she stood up, Marnie asked Cal asked Cal why he did what he did as well. He told her he knew how powerful she was, and seeing her helpless was something he had not expected. He reached a hand out to Marnie to help Marnie up, but she did not take the help. "I'm thankful that you stopped her, but I don't know if I can trust you yet," she told him. Cal understood her feelings. He had not had the best history when it came to the Cromwells in Halloween Town. He took a step back, gave Marnie room to get up on her own. Once on her feet, Marnie grabbed the mayor and threw her into the cell and shut the door. She wasn't going to miss the chance to stop Hoodwinkle at that moment. She looked shocked as she turned around and jumped at Marnie. Her arms reached through the bars as it shut in front of her face. Cal was taken aback by the sudden burst of anger that she let out. Did not realize the mayor was that violent. As he and Marnie walked back down the hall towards where they had left the others, Marnie stayed a few steps back from Cal, not trusting him yet. She wanted to be prepared if he tried to do anything. From their end of the tunnel, Gwen and everyone could hear the footsteps beginning to grow as they got closer. From the shadows emerged Cal. Gwen and Sophie quickly took an attack position, assuming the worst. But Marnie, seeing this, hurried and leapt in front of him and began to explain everything. She told them how the mayor had tricked everyone, including Cal, and how they threw her in the jail cell. Marnie asked if that meant Cal was actually good. Marnie told him she wasn't sure yet, that it was hard to trust him after everything he had done to them. Cal understood this and just nodded his head in agreement as he told them that he wanted to make it up to them. And with that, they headed back out of the building. Chapter 8. The Council Convenes. Once back in the mayor's office, Marnie summoned the council and explained what had happened. Cal confirmed everything Marnie told them and the part that he had played in the events taken place recently. Suddenly, the council vanished. "Wait," Marnie said, shocked. "Where are you going?" "Are they going to do anything?" Gwen explained that they were going to deliberate and they will return when they have decided what to do. With them gone to deliberate on the events of the last few days and what would ultimately end up doing, Marnie and everyone began to search the office for clues to the mayor's larger plan. After what felt like hours of searching, they hadn't turned up anything. Everyone was at a loss as to what to do next. So, they all decided to head back to the house until council had made their decision. Outside, they hailed Benny in his cab. Halloween Town had an oddly calming sense about it now. Marnie had never felt it so relaxed, and it began to make her feel uneasy. She began to look over her shoulder every few seconds, as if someone was going to sneak up on her, but she didn't like this sensation. She had not said a word to anyone about the feeling, but Sophie noticed what she had been doing and told her that she too could feel the oddness in the air. As they were talking, Benny came screeching around the corner and stopped in front of them. "You phone a bone?" Benny asked with a laugh. Everyone just rolled their eyes at his joke as they got in the car to head home. Once back at the house, Gwen led them inside with Cal behind her, Marnie behind him. Most of the others had left already, until only Luke and Ethan remained, waiting on the others to return. As they came through the door, the two boys jumped up to meet them. Cal walked through the door, and Luke's demeanor changed. "What is he doing here?" Luke asked, as if he were upset. Marnie explained what had happened in the mountains and to the mayor's office. However, none of them seemed to ease Luke's mind. "I don't understand," Ethan said to Luke. "Who is this guy?" Luke began to explain how Cal had cast the gray spell on Halloween Town and tried to steal the Cromwell magic and turned the mortals into creatures they mocked. Ethan was taken aback by the things that Cal had done and quickly began to wonder why Marnie would have him with her. Damn dyslexia. She explained how the mayor had double-crossed everyone and Cal actually helped to save her in the dungeon cell under City Hall. Luke seemed glad that Marnie was safe, but he still was not happy about Cal. Soon everything calmed down and everyone began to contemplate what the council might do. When they reconvened to deliver the verdict, they knew the council would do something. They always handed down a fair but strict punishment to those who endangered Halloween Town. However, like when they stripped Ethan's father of his powers. Let me try to reposition here. I'm sliding out of my chair a little bit. Okay, there we go. Yet there was still part of them that was worried the council would not do anything to the mayor for her actions. They tried to push those thoughts out of their minds and tell them justice would prevail. As it got later and later, soon everyone was ready to head to bed. Dylan looked at Cal and asked what they would do with him for the night. Luke stepped up and offered to stay awake to watch him all night since he didn't trust Cal. Ethan said, "Oh, shut up, scam likely calls." Ethan then said that he would take shifts watching Cal, but Luke cut him off and said, Sorry, I still don't trust you either after what you did to Marnie and her daughter. Marnie cut them both off before a fight began and just told them to figure it out. Exhausted from everything they had been through, Marnie and Emily headed off to bed for the night and let everyone else take charge. The next day, everyone got up expecting something to have gone bad during the night. But for the first time since they got back to Halloween Town, nothing had happened. The weather was clear, the sun was shining bright. There hadn't been a more perfect day in Halloween Town in years. The town was quiet and peaceful once more. All the creatures were back to living their lives as if nothing had even taken place. In fact, everything was so good this morning that Marnie and the others were almost unsure what to do. Everyone decided to walk into town to see how everything was operating. All of the businesses in town were in normal operations. Everyone was peaceful as if nothing had even happened. It was almost too peaceful. Everyone seemed to be enjoying the refreshing new atmosphere of Halloween Town. But Marnie wasn't as calm. There was a sense of foreboding in the air. Oh, trust me, I wish scam calls didn't exist either. They've got them no-call lists, but them things don't work half the time. As they walked around town, there was a sudden flash as the council appeared in the middle of town square. The council waved their hand, and a small cell with the mayor appeared in the center of the square. Everyone stopped and looked up at them as they began to render the verdict. The council has deliberated and come to a decision, they said. For your crimes against the creature world, we hereby strip you of your power and confine you to the crystal orb of Prospero. I don't know how I came up with that term, but okay. I don't remember coming up with that one. As they issued the verdict, a small crystal ball, about the size of a mortal basketball, appeared from a burst of blinding white light. As the light faded, the council members in the center reached out with his 4 arms and held the orb out in front of himself. As he held the orb, the rest of the council waved their hands, and the mayor began to turn to smoke as she was transported into the orb. As she faded, she let out a scream which was silenced as she turned into smoke and was absorbed into the crystal. With the mayor sentenced and imprisoned, the council turned their attention to Cal. Taking a deep breath, he stepped up, prepared to accept whatever punishment they would hand down. For your crimes against the creature world, both present and past, they began. We hereby strip you of your power and banish you to the mortal world. May your life there become more fulfilling than you made for yourself here. Everyone was shocked. Stripping of the powers was common, but nobody had ever been banished to live in the mortal world after that had happened. Even Ethan, who gave up his powers after his father was stripped, was allowed to stay in Halloween Town. Before anyone else could say anything, the portal to the mortal world opened and Cal was forced through as if he was floating on a platform that he had no control over. Before anyone could say a word, he was already through the gate and he began to shut. Marnie felt as if she needed to say something, but no words came to mind in that moment. Luke and Ethan just looked on, almost happy to see Cal leaving. Meanwhile, everyone else just stood in silence as everything unfolded before their eyes. Once both the mayor and Cal had been given their punishments, the council turned to Marnie and waved her forward. Nervous, she stepped forward, a place she had not been since she pushed for the creature exchange program while she was in high school. Marnie Piper, they began. for your continued service to Halloween Town. We are hereby extending an official invitation to become a member of the council. She was stunned. A Cromwell has never sat on the council before. It was the highest seat in Halloween Town, and a great honor. However, it also came with a lot of responsibilities and time away from family. It didn't take Marnie to make her decision. Your Honors, she began, I appreciate your invitation to this esteemed council. However, I respectfully pass. I just wish to live a quiet life, as my Grandma Aggie did for centuries, and enjoy my family while I can. Without saying a word, the council members all nodded and smiled as they faded away once more. Are you crazy? Asked Sophie. Gwen quickly cut her off and told Marnie how proud she was. With a smile, she simply grabbed Emily and explained that she just wanted to be there to watch her daughter grow up and become the next young Cromwell witch, to do something great. Emily took her mother's hand and just looked up at her and smiled. Marnie looked down at her and smiled back as she had bent over and gave a kiss on the forehead as she pulled her in for a hug. With everything calmed down now, everyone was ready to go home and just relax. Not having to worry or care about anything for the first time in a long time, they waved down Benny to get a ride back to the house. As they were about halfway back to the house, Marnie quickly asked Benny to stop and turn around. What are you doing? Asked Gwen. Marnie told her they had forgotten to do something in town. Confused, everyone tried to think of what else done in town. Quickly though, Benny turned the car around and took them back to town as asked. They pulled into the town square. Marnie asked them to be dropped off at City Hall, so Benny obliged and parked right in front of the steps where everyone piled out. Marnie quickly ran up the stairs as she told everyone to follow her. Still confused, they ran after her as she entered the building. Quickly, Marnie led them back to the mayor's office. What are we doing here? Asked Gwen. Marnie began to explain to him that they had left the town without a mayor, and there was no time for nominating and electing someone at that moment. Halloween Town needs a mayor to run the town, she told them. We need someone to run things just until we can hold a new election. Everyone realized she was right, but wasn't sure who could handle the job while they worked to form an emergency election. That is when Marnie explained that she knew who was knowledgeable enough to run Halloween Town. Dylan, she began, you've studied all kinds of things on Halloween Town when you were at Witch U. He nodded, but he wasn't sure he was understanding what she was saying, or if he was just in denial. What do you mean, I should be mayor? He asked. Marnie explained again what her thoughts were. Yes, Dylan began. I know a good deal of Halloween Town from the studies I did in college, but I don't know enough to run this town. Yes, Marnie started, but what you don't know, you can learn by using that speed reading spell again. Then Luke stepped up and offered to help Dylan run things around Halloween Town. Ethan also offered to help, explaining that since his father had been on the council at one time, he could help as well. Dylan thanked them and accepted the job for the time being with the help of Luke and Ethan. With that, the girls left, and the guys got to work figuring things out. There was a lot to do to start rebuilding Halloween Town. Slowly getting towards the end here. Only 2 chapters to go. Chapter 9, Rebuilding Halloween Town. Now, Chapter 9 kind of technically is the final chapter. Chapter 10's kind of more like a epilogue. Kind of like a a little time jump forward, and so, but we're getting to the end of the story finally. Chapter 9, Rebuilding Halloween Town. Now that everything was taken care of and justice had been served, Marnie now turned her attention to what the future of Halloween Town is going to have to be in order to prevent any future threat from attacking the creature world. Gwen told Marnie not to rush things and to take the time when considering all possible options. I know your views on Halloween Town, Gwen began, but remember that others will have a different opinion. Marnie just nodded in agreement without saying a word. There were some, like Marnie, who felt it was time to end Halloween Town and rejoin a more accepting mortal world. Yet there were others who were still apprehensive about going to the mortal world. Marnie knew this decision would not be an easy one. She could not just choose an answer for everyone. The people needed to have a say in their own lives, but if they held a vote, the majority of the people voted for one option, those who did not want that option would then be forced as well. There seemed to be no clear answer that Marnie could see. As she thought of what to do, Dylan and the others walked into the house. "What are you doing here?" Marnie asked. They explained that they had done what they could for the day and they would head back tomorrow and continue their work. She was shocked that she had been thinking of what to do for so long, and she completely lost track of time. The next day, everyone woke up early and began to discuss their plans for the day. Dylan and the guys were going to head back to City Hall to see what else needed to be done. During the night, Marnie had another one of her dream visions, and may have come up with an idea everyone could agree with. She set everyone down in the living room and began to explain her decision. "I believe I have a way to make everyone happy," she began. "I understand some want to join the mortal world, and be able to do more, and others would rather stay here and feel safe knowing what's available." Everyone shook their heads in agreement, continued. "So I believe that if we all join our powers for a single spell, then we can move all of Halloween Town into the mortal world." She looked around, expecting everyone to understand and agree with her, but they just looked on in confusion. In a sense, Carl D. Bradley isn't so famous. The Edmund Fitzgerald's fairly notable ship. That one's pretty famous. Now, the Carl D. Bradley, probably not as famous or as widely known. People probably wouldn't know that one too much, but now the Edmund Fitzgerald, she's pretty well known. I mean, there's an entire song about her, about the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. But why not ask? I appreciate the offer about, wanting me to write the book on it, but I think if you wanted to write that'd be taking away, something that could give you something to do. Writing takes time. It takes thought, energy, all of that. And when you have nothing else to do, writing can give you a good, filler of your time, something productive that you can do to create something, and of course, you're the one with the ideas, so, nobody else could come up with, any better ideas for the stuff other than you. You're the one with what would end up being probably the best ideas for the story overall. So, I think it'd probably be best, go into, like with my Halloween Town book here that I'm reading, go into Google Docs. If you've got a Gmail or anything, you can go directly into your Google Documents, And you can just start typing away. And it will automatically save everything you wrote. And if your computer crashes or something happens, it's all saved. You can log into Google from any computer anywhere and have access to your Google Documents, and you'll never lose access to your book. So, I would recommend using your Google Documents to write it. But no, I think it'd be best for if you want to write it, to sit down and work some of it out yourself. Create a synopsis on the plot points you want to work on, and nobody knows what the story's going to be better than you, so you'd be the best person to try to write it. But back to Halloween Town here. Marnie wasn't sure what they were thinking, and asked if they understood what she was trying to say. "Not really," said Gwen as she looked on at you. "So do you want to end Halloween Town?" asked Sophie. Marnie just shook her head and tried to explain. "Yes and no. I want to end our exclusion and isolation in this world and rejoin the mortal world, but I want to keep Halloween Town just as it is now." Still confused, they all... "Okay, let's try this again. I want to move all of Halloween Town to the mortal world." This didn't seem to help ease their confusion. "Okay, another way," she began. "Sophie, remember that show we used to watch, Once Upon a Time?" A little Disney nod here. Sophie said, "Yeah, I remember. Remember the way the town Storybrooke people, it was in the real world, but they were still separated by magic?" Sophie began to understand the thought. Halloween Town, as it was now, would be its own little town in the mortal world, but only select people who knew the way could enter town. Everyone who knew would be able to come and go as much as they liked. Slowly, Gwen and Dylan began to understand what she meant and realized it was actually a really good solution, would benefit both sides. "Okay, but what spell would be strong enough to do this?" asked Dylan. "Well, to undo a spell, you just say it backwards," Marnie replied. "So maybe if we used the spell that isolated Halloween Town to this realm backwards..." But before she could finish what she was saying, Gwen interrupted and explained nobody knew that spell, that it came from the dark times and all magic of that time was lost. Good and bad spells alike. Marnie slumped back into her chair, upset. Was her plan never meant to be? Was Halloween Town meant to always exist in isolation? She didn't know what else to do. As she sat sulking in her chair, Sophie makes up an offhand comment that catches Marnie off guard. "Too bad we can't just go back to the start of Halloween Town and get the spell we need." Marnie quickly stood up and hugged her sister. "You're a genius, Soph," she exclaimed. Everyone looked confused. Then Marnie explained how she found the key to unlock the amulet in college. Nobody had really known, as she and Periwinkle were alone in their office when she went back the first time. Gwen didn't seem to like the idea, but knew it was the only way. Reluctantly, she stepped up and helped Marnie open another time barrier. Marnie looked over at Emily and waved her to join her. "For real, Mommy? I can go with you?" Marnie told her she could and explained that there was someone in the past she wanted Emily to meet. Gwen knew what she meant, so she didn't try to talk Marnie out of the plan. She knew she couldn't if she had tried. So the two stepped through hand in hand. As they stepped through, they found themselves atop a hill. Looking around, Marnie quickly realized this was where Aggie would one day build her home. She then turned to Emily and explained they were in a very different place, and if she told her to do something, then she was to do that without question. This was what was referred to as the dark times, she told Emily. Witches like us were not always treated nicely. Oh, shut up with these weird phone numbers. Emily said okay and agreed to do exactly as she was told, so the two of them set off towards town. The firelights of Halloween Town flickering in the distance led their way. Once in town, they hurried toward the castle. Young Splendora Cromwell was about to be made queen once Halloween Town had been safely relocated to its own realm. Marnie had to hurry before the spell was cast so she could do what she needed to do back in her own time. She wasn't sure yet how she would record the spell for use back home, but she knew she would have to find a way soon. The two of them came up the side of the castle and hurried through a door. Unseen by others, Marnie quickly took Emily's hand and headed up the stairs to her old dorm room, which was Splendora's bedroom. As they reached the stairs, Marnie heard someone coming down. Quickly, they both hid out of sight, hoping not to get caught. They couldn't be seen. They couldn't see who had come down, but they stood on the side of the wall, talking for what felt like an hour. Eventually, they left, and the coast was clear for Marnie and Emily to continue up to the room. The two of them hurried up the stairs before anyone else came along. And before they knew it, they were standing in front of Splendora's bedroom door. Before she could knock on the door, it opened, leaving her standing face to face with Splendora. "You're back?" she asked Marnie. Marnie was confused at first, but she looked up to see the large pumpkin and realized she had just left her after getting the key. She explained what was going on with Halloween Town and what her plan was. Splendora questioned the plan and wondered if they should even isolate the creature world, if they will just undo everything in the future. Marnie explained that there will be many years of turmoil and oppression by mortals, and isolation will be good for both creatures and mortals. But eventually people will become more accepting and can live together again. Splendora was happy to hear people would eventually change, but she told Marnie that she was unable to help as there was no spell like the one she was looking for. Marnie was confused. "But that's your first and only spell as queen," she told Splendora. "How did Halloween Town become separated from the mortal world?" Marnie was confused as to what to do next. She decided to put that aside for a minute. She called Emily to her side. "Splendora, there's someone I want you to meet," Marnie said as Emily stepped up to her side. "Emily, this is Splendora Agatha Cromwell," Marnie told her. "This is your great-grandma Aggie." Emily had a confused look on her face. She didn't know what to say. "But I thought Grandma Aggie was gone," she asked. Marnie explained that she had passed away in the future, but going back in time allowed them to see her once more. The idea was difficult for Emily to understand, but she just went with the plan. Splendora looked down at the young child in front of her and began to smile. She was happy to know what the future of her family would be. She told Marnie that she did not know what spell she needed to save Halloween Town in her time. She was willing to help in any way she could. Her first order was to help Marnie and Emily blend in, as their outfits did not match the period they were now in. So with a wave of her hand, Splendora easily transformed their outfits into more traditional styles of the day. Quickly, the three of them walked out of the room and headed down the stairs to the courtyard. Everyone was gathering outside for the coronation and were watching Agatha as she came out onto the upper floors of the castle. Marnie and Emily stayed back just inside the castle out of sight and watched Agatha become queen. But to Marnie's surprise, Agatha turned and waved her and Emily out to join her. Holding hands, the two of them stepped out together, unsure of what was going to happen. Knowing the townspeople could not know or understand the truth of Marnie and Emily, Agatha quickly made up a story of who they were. This young witch you see before you is of a distant lineage of the Cromwell line from a faraway home, Agatha continued. As many of you know, the mortals are cruel and violent toward the creatures of this realm. So, with the power of 3 Cromwell witches, we have decided to form our own peaceful world outside of the mortal realm, where we can live in peace. Halloween Town will no longer suffer at the hands of the mortals. Marnie was confused. How could she and Emily help create Halloween Town? Yet she had to rejoin the 2 realms as well. Before she could say a word, Agatha took the 2 of their hands and brought them to stand beside her. Agatha began to speak to the crowds. She exclaimed how the creatures were persecuted by the mortals, and it was time to create a realm where creatures would live in peace. The crowd applauded as she spoke. Knowing she had the support of Halloween Town, she began. Without knowing what to say, Agatha began to speak. Oh, goddamn. All these fucking numbers are trying to call me today. Agatha began to speak. The words first came to mind. Marnie and Emily quickly joined, tried to keep the rhythm of the new spell, but not knowing what was coming, it was difficult. After reciting the new spell and nothing happened, the 3 of them once again recited the same spell once more. This time, knowing the words and keeping rhythm, they were able to speak in unison. Creature et the motel. Okay, I don't remember what I wrote in that foreign language, what language that was, and what it translates to. So again, I'm not reading. I'm not reading that spell. Marnie was shocked. She had helped create Halloween Town. She had always done that. Had she always done that? Why didn't Grandma Aggie ever tell her? She thought that it was perhaps best she hadn't known, or she may have done things differently. Marnie then realized this had to have been why Aggie really? Oh no, I gotta edit this again. That is. Pushed her mother so hard to make sure that she was properly trained. If Gwen had let Marnie become mortal, Halloween Town would never have been formed in the first place. Time is an endless loop, it seems. It seems to be determined to repeat itself over and over. Before she knew it, everything around her didn't I just see one of them up there somewhere too? I don't know. Everything around her had changed. She was so lost in thought she never even realized the spell had worked. Halloween Town was now in its own realm, where Marnie had always known it to be. Marnie gave Agatha a hug. As she prepared to say goodbye. I need to tell you something, she began. In the future, my mother will want her children to be mortal. You have to do everything you can to make sure that doesn't happen, or none of this will happen." Agatha nodded in agreement as she gave Emily a hug, and the two of them waved their hands and made the time portal reappear. Before she stepped through, Marnie told Agatha that she could never tell her about any of what had just happened. It was important to the timeline that she find it out naturally. With that, Marnie gave Agatha one final hug before she stepped back into modern-day Halloween Town. She stared at Agatha as the portal closed, trying to keep the image of her grandmother in her mind. With the portal closed, they were now standing back in the front yard of the Cromwell house. Gwen and Sophie quickly ran to meet them as they stepped back through and into the yard. "Did it work?" asked Gwen. "Yes, I know the spell that was used to create Halloween Town. And I got to meet Grandma Aggie," exclaimed Emily. Sophie looked shocked, but Gwen just gave a slight knowing smile as she pulled Emily closer to her. They all quickly made their way inside the house to discuss the plan to relocate Halloween Town back to the mortal world. Seeing how hard it was to first get right in the past, Marnie knew they needed to know the spell by heart to get it right. When she got inside, Marnie found a piece of paper and quickly wrote down the spell before she forgot how it was worded. Having it written down, she gave it to Gwen and told her what it was. "This is the spell that created Halloween Town. I need you and Sophie to memorize this, so we'll take everything we have to do this tomorrow. Especially having to say it in reverse if we are going to undo the original spell." Gwen agreed, took the spell, so her and Sophie could begin memorizing it in detail before the next morning. Sophie wondered what it was like being there and seeing the creation of Halloween Town. If all three needed to do this spell to rejoin the creature in mortal worlds, why did she and her mother need to learn the spell so badly? Sophie then realized what this must mean. She quickly got up and pulled Marnie into a back room. "You created Halloween Town," she exclaimed. Marnie tried to deny what she was saying, but Sophie wasn't giving up. Finally, Marnie relented and told her the truth. "Yes, okay? I helped create Halloween Town. You cannot tell Mom or anyone. Nobody is to know of this, or it could do something with the timeline." Sophie stood in silence at the revelation. "Promise me you won't tell anyone, Sophie," Marnie exclaimed. Sophie nodded in understanding. Even though the events had passed and were done, there was no telling what kind of paradoxes could arise from a lot of people knowing Marnie's involvement in the creation of Halloween Town. The next morning, everyone got up and packed their things as they prepared to head to town to start the process of rejoining the mortal world. Everyone was nervous with what was about to take place and unsure how everyone would react. As they finished gathering their things, they all stood in the living room in a group embrace. For Marnie, it seemed to last forever as she tried to remember every moment. As Grandma Aggie had used magic to create her home, there was no knowing how it would handle the reunification into the mortal world. Or if it would even survive the move at all. This very well could be the last time any of them ever saw the home. And they all tried to remember every detail in their own way. Eventually, though, the hugging had to come to an end as they picked their bags and walked out the front door for what could be the last time. Without even calling him, Benny was already waiting at the gate to take everyone to town. There was something different about Halloween Town today, a foreboding in the air that everyone seemed to sense a change coming to their lives. Even the once chipper and jokeful Benny was somber and reserved as he sat waiting in his cab. "Are you ready to go?" asked Benny. Marnie couldn't speak, but she just gave a nod as Benny started the cab. Gwen, Sophie, Dylan all got into the cab as they were ready to go. However, Marnie stopped in the middle of the walk. "What's wrong?" asked Gwen. "There's one thing I want to do before we go. I will meet you in town." Gwen didn't ask any questions. She knew Marnie wouldn't listen to anything right now. As the doors on the cab closed, Benny slowly drove off down the hill towards town. "Mommy, what's wrong?" asked Emily. "Nothing's wrong, baby girl," Marnie replied. "I just wanted you to experience something I have always loved to do before we couldn't do it anymore." As she told Emily, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small object. "One day you will have your own broom, but until then..." Marnie then opened her hands, and the small object instantly grew into a broom. Emily was excited to take her first broom ride. Everyone always talked about flying on brooms and taking off and doing something and leaving Emily behind. But now she would experience flight for herself. She was overjoyed. Marnie climbed on and gestured for Emily to sit in front of her. Usually, when two people were riding, the other person would sit in the back. But because of how small Emily was, Marnie wanted to keep a better eye on her while in the air. Once they were on the broom, Marnie felt safe, she lifted off. Once in the air, they headed toward town, where Marnie began to give Emily a tour of Halloween Town. She showed her which university where her and Dylan went to college, and Sophie had gone when she graduated. She showed them where she first met Luke, told her the story of how she didn't like him at first. She showed her the movie theater where Calabar had held so many, including Grandma Gwen and Great-Grandma Aggie. They flew around for a while. Marnie was taking in the sights as much as she was showing them to Emily. As much as Marnie would have loved to fly around forever, she knew they had to land. Marnie looked down to see everyone had gathered in front of City Hall. Steadily, she glided down and landed on the top steps. Gwen, Dylan, and Sophie stood around her for support. Marnie wasn't sure exactly what she was going to tell everyone. What they had planned was needed to protect Halloween Town. Even if not everyone would like the outcome. "People of Halloween Town," Marty began. "As many of you can remember, our community has come under attack repeatedly from many different foes. From Calabar to his son, to the Knights, and even the Dominion. However, after stopping recent attempts to destroy Halloween Town, we have reached a conclusion that we know not everyone may like. Some of you may be scared, confused, or unsure what to expect. We talked for many hours about all of the different options possible, and in the end, we had only one solution. With the mortal world now being acceptable of creatures, we have decided to rejoin Halloween Town with the mortal realm. Everyone began to whisper each other. The whole town was abuzz with the news. Most seemed to like the notion, but there were a select few who were not as welcoming. "How do we know the mortal realm is accepting as you say?" one person asked. Several yas quickly followed. Then a few creatures stepped up and said, "Because we have seen how they have changed." Marnie looked down to see several of the kids she had taken to Mortal High School. They had grown and now had families of their own. She felt honored that they remembered their time in the mortal world and trusted Marnie enough to go back. With the town... When the town heard what they had to say, many slowly came to agreement, but a few remained against the move. That is when Marnie spoke up again and exclaimed, "I know some may still not feel safe with the move, but we have a way to ease those fears." Marnie then explained how Halloween Town would be in the mortal world, but have a protection spell around its boundary. Only those who we permit to enter will be able to enter, but anyone can leave whenever they want. Any mortal who does not know about our town will pass through without ever seeing us. With that, the last few creatures of opposition were no more. It seemed to Marnie and everyone that the whole town was in agreement with the solution to move Halloween Town to the mortal realm. Seeing their acceptance of the move, Marnie and Dylan asked Dylan to take Emily and stand back. So he took her hand and stepped to the back, closer to the door. As he did that, the others stepped forward, right to the edge of the top step. Giving each other a knowing glance, they nodded their heads and began to recite the spell in reverse in order to undo its effect. And I'm definitely not reading that spell in reverse. I literally wrote the exact same spell, but in reverse of what it is just a couple paragraphs up when they created Halloween Town. It's the exact same thing, just literally written backwards. So I'm not even going to attempt to read that one in reverse especially. So on to the next paragraph. So we get very close to the end here. Just as it had done with Halloween Town was created, when Halloween Town was created, everything began to swirl around them. The town streets filled with black smoke, like mist that enveloped everything it touched. As everyone looked up, the sky began to darken. It was as if night had fallen, but there wasn't a star in the sky. Within a few moments, everything swelled until not even the sky could be seen. All of Halloween Town was now buried under a thick black cloud. Marnie was nervous that they had messed up the spell, because this was not what happened when she and Splendora had cast it the first time. However, just as fast as it had enveloped the town, it began to fade. And as it began to clear, it was as if someone was washing dirt out of a rug. Waves of blackness rushed through the streets as the spell subsided. And as it cleared, everyone began to look around. All of the buildings were the same, but the surrounding lands were different than they had just been. The spell seemed to have worked. Halloween Town was now back in the mortal realm. Marnie turned back to the crowd of people. "Thank you, everyone who supported the move. It truly is going to be the best thing for Halloween Town. Now I just ask for one more favor. Every magical creature capable of casting a spell, cast your strongest protection spell into the air." Townspeople throughout Halloween Town reached their hands and wands to the air and began casting spells. With each one, a burst of white and blue lights were launched into the air. All of the spells collided above town, and a whitish-blue curtain of magic slowly fell around Halloween Town. A clap of thunder would be heard everywhere as the spell hit the ground again. Suddenly, a bright yellow light blinded the town as the protection spell was locked into place. As everything cleared, the ground began to shake for a couple seconds as if an earthquake was hitting, and the townspeople became spooked as they had never experienced such an event before. Marnie remembered the same thing when she helped Splendora create Halloween Town. Expecting this, she quickly calmed everyone's fear by explaining that it was natural for that to happen as the spell settled into place. Once the shaking stopped, the townspeople looked around and began to survey what had changed in the move. For the most part, Halloween Town looked the same as it did an hour ago. All of the buildings were the same, it seemed. Everyone quickly went back to their homes to see what state their homes were in. Halloween Town seemed to many to be as it was before the spell was cast. It was thought that undoing the spell that relocated the town originally would also undo any magic that may have been cast around town during the centuries of isolation. While a few minor changes were noticeable, for the most part, Halloween Town was just as it had always been. The event unchanging actually seemed to calm once some of those were still anxious about the move. For the first time in decades, Halloween Town felt different. The only issue many people seemed to worry about was who would be mayor now that Hoodwinkle had been ousted and the town was back to in the mortal world. Dylan and Luke had been handling things while the relocation had been planned. Marnie made the announcement that an emergency election would need to be held to select a mayor. She asked if there were any nominations. Several people nominated Marnie, but she quickly declined the offer and stepped back position. Sophie then stepped forward and nominated Dylan. He's been running things the last few days anyway. Why don't we just keep him on as mayor? Marnie asked if anyone seconded the nomination. Luke, Gwen, and several townspeople raised their hands. Marnie then asked if there were any other nominations, but nobody mentioned any names. Damn it. Marnie then says, well, looks like there's no need for a full election. Congratulations, Dylan. You're now the mayor of Halloween Town. Dylan looked shocked that the town would trust him enough to keep him as mayor with a formal election. This was kind of flattering in a way, as he'd always felt like Marnie overshadowed him and Sophie. It was nice to know they thought highly of all the Cromwells, not just Marnie or Aggie. But he said nothing to anyone so as not to offend anyone or something. Marnie asked who he wanted for his advisors to help him, and he quickly said Luke and Sophie. Monroe, Jesus Christ. Marnie asked if anyone else had any objections to them being placed in those positions. Nobody objected. Luke, Sophie, congratulations. You two now work in the mayor's office as his advisors. Having all that sorted out, the three of them headed inside to begin. The rest of Halloween Town dispersed and headed back to their homes. The town square was once again empty, except for a few creatures going about their daily lives. Everyone went back to their normal routine so quickly it was almost as if nothing had happened at all. Marnie stood on the steps for a few minutes, just looking around town and realizing how things worked out this time. She looked down at Emily and just smiled. All seemed calm for the first time in recent years. Gwen patted Marnie on the shoulder. and told her it was time to go home. Together they walked down the stairs, got in Benny's cab for the first time in the mortal world. Once they returned to Cromwell Manor, Gwen gave Marnie... God damn it, shut up. Gwen gave Marnie and Emily a hug as they prepared to go back to their home. Together they opened a small portal directly into Marnie's living room and said their goodbyes. That's when Marnie said something that Gwen did not expect. Now that Halloween Town is in the mortal world, she began, I think Emily and I will move here before I begin her training. Gwen was happy to hear the whole Cromwell family would be living in Halloween Town for the first time in nearly a century. They all hugged one more time as Marnie and Emily stepped back into their own home. Chapter 10, A Peaceful Future. Now we get a little that's the end of the official story. Now we get a little time jump to the future a little bit. It's been 10 years since Marnie and the Cromwells relocated all of Halloween Town back to the mortal world. Things have remained peaceful throughout town. Dylan was re-elected mayor twice in that time, implementing new policies that helped to build Halloween's town placement in the mortal world. One of his last measures before he retired was to open Halloween Town to outsiders, mortals who loved the history of Halloween Town but not the commercialism of the holiday. Brought a lot of revenue to the town. Some even moved to town. After he retired and didn't seek re-election, the town voted Sophie in as mayor, where she was currently serving her second term. She has not only kept, but has grown her brother's policy for mortals in Halloween Town. The town has never been more successful than it has been in recent years. Marnie had moved to Halloween Town shortly after relocating the town. Her and Emily moved in with Gwen for a while at Cromwell Manor. After a year of living there, she began to look for her own place in town. However, Gwen decided to give them the house, and she found a small place in town. Sophie decided to stay with Marnie for a while, but eventually moved out as well. Marnie and Emily have now lived in the house alone for about 3 years. Having just turned 15, Emily had completed most of her basic training as a young witch. She was now moving on to the more advanced training and was quickly passing her mother up in skill. Getting more and more skilled, Emily was already looking to apply to Witch University. Like her uncle, she was extremely smart and had already skipped a couple grades in school and was nearing her graduation. Dylan, after he retired as mayor, moved out of Halloween Town. Having never been comfortable with magic, he wanted a break from everything. So he moved out of town and settled down with a mortal woman. They are expecting their second child in the fall. Marnie and Gwen go to see them as much as they can and keep Sophie filled in on how they are doing, since she's too busy to travel. However, at least once a year, Sophie does take a vacation and goes to see her brother and sister-in-law. Their young daughter, Aggie, loves when Aunt Sophie visits because she always brings gifts, just as Grandma Aggie had done when they were kids. Having been named in honor of her, it only felt right. They thought, though it drives her parents crazy at times, especially the time Sophie brought a training broom for young Aggie, her parents spent hours trying to get her to land and take a nap. Sophie laughed as they chased her around the house. Dylan, as tall as he was, had to hunch over to try to catch his daughter, but she always managed to evade him. Sophie, aside from being mayor, had met a young witch, and the two were engaged to be married. Their relationship did cause a few heads to turn in Halloween Town. However, most everyone was fine with them. God damn, will you people shut up with these phone calls? They were more upset with how they met, seeing their work together as a conflict of interest. But the two didn't let the talk bother them. They just lived their lives and did what they wanted. Their families couldn't be happier for them. Regardless of how others felt, the two young ladies had their own small house not far from Marnie on the edge of town. Emily would regularly visit them at their place. She loves her aunt's girlfriend, and they often hang out together. Even though she was older than Emily, she found that hanging out together gave her something to do while Sophie was at work. After Gwen gave Marnie the house and moved to town, she met a man and began seeing him more and more. Eventually, the two started dating and ended up engaged. After losing the kid's father so many years ago and everything that kept happening with Halloween Town, she never even thought of dating again. Even once Marnie and Dylan went to college and Aggie started training Sophie, she never gave it thought. Perhaps that's why she got into real estate. Showing houses helped give her purpose, but all that was gone, and now she had time to focus on herself. The two of them were celebrating their first day anniversary in a couple months. Marnie hasn't been as accepting of her new stepdad as the others have been, but she does like him a good deal. Luke was still great friends with both Marnie and the whole Cromwell family. Him and Marnie went out once after her move back to town, but found they were better off as friends. It wasn't long after that he met Natalie, the young troll Marnie had in her... And now it's trying to reconnect here. In high school, the two of them married about a year after they met, and they're expecting their first child this Halloween. They already made Marnie the child's godmother and Dylan the godfather. The two of them were so happy for Luke, they already started buying baby stuff to spoil the little one when they got here. The spell that had originally been formed to protect Halloween Town from any mortals who were aware of the presence was the only real spell still in effect around Halloween Town. But for many, it played no role in their lives. For the first time ever, mortals and creatures truly lived together in peace. Of course, there were a few mortals who were scared and acted out, but they were usually taken care of quickly so they didn't cause any trouble. Halloween Town and the Mortal Town nearby had a joint task force for dealing with any kind of troublemakers. The first few years were really difficult, but things have calmed down a lot since then. For many, it was as if Halloween Town had never rejoined, and was still on its own. That's how peaceful things had been for everyone. Today, Halloween Town resembled little of what it did when they first came back to the mortal world. Humans have been so accepting that many creatures moved away, and more humans moved to town. Multiple mortal businesses had moved to town, and now the town square looked more like any other town in this world first arrived. It had been voted on a couple times before, but kept getting voted down. Though it was noted that with each vote, the number of people in support of dropping the spell had grown. Sophie felt strongly that if they voted once more, that it would be approved and they could remove the spell. One day in town, Marnie was out to lunch with Emily when she looked up and seen a familiar face walking down the street. Cal was looking around in amazement at how much Halloween Town had changed. Quickly getting up, Marnie gave Emily the money to pay the bill and headed outside to talk to Cal. "Hey, stranger," she said. Cal turned to see Marnie and moved to give her a hug, but quickly restrained himself and simply shook her hand. "Can't believe how much things have changed around here since..." Cal just stopped mid-sentence, not wanting to dredge up the past that he rightfully regretted having ever done. Marnie could tell how hard it was for him to think about the wrongs he had committed in the past, and that he seemed to have changed. As they stood there, Emily rejoined them. Cal looked at her for a second, unsure who she was at first. "Emily, is that you?" he asked. Emily nodded, a little scared, as she remembered what she had spent years forgetting. Before she could say a word, Cal apologized for what he had done. "I know it's hard to believe, but I have had a lot of time to think about everything I've done to you, all of you. I truly am sorry." Emily gave a slight smile of acceptance, but still felt hesitant around Cal. Marnie told Emily to head home and make sure her homework had been done before school tomorrow. She then turned and asked Cal to tell her everything that he had been doing since the last time they saw each other. He told her how, after losing his powers and being sent to the mortal world, he had a hard time adjusting to things. He explained how cruel the mortals seemed to be at first. He found himself homeless for a time, having no money or mortal skills. He had no idea what to do for the longest time. Eventually, a man gave him a chance to prove himself by giving him a job. Cal never took that chance for granted. As soon as he was able to afford a small apartment, it was hard, but he saved and scrounged everything he needed. He told her he finally found a place in this world where when he got word of a strange new town where it was Halloween all the time. People often spoke of how this strange new town seemed to have just popped up into existence in a single night. Cal thought to himself, but quickly pushed it out of his mind. There's no way that could be Halloween Town, he thought. Still, he heard more and more about this little town, and he couldn't help but think of the place he had been banished from years ago. "So I had to come and see for myself if the rumors were true," he told Marnie. She asked him what he thought of the changes. He liked how things were now. People were much more inclusive and tolerant of the creatures. Marnie confessed to him that some people still seem to think that the creatures are just humans in costumes and makeup. But as long as they remain peaceful, nobody seems to care. The two continued to walk around as Marnie showed him the changes that have come to Halloween Town over the years. Then from nowhere came a familiar sound of tires screeching. "I see Benny is still the same as always," Cal said with a laugh. "Cal," Benny said with a shock as he noticed who was talking to. "Is this guy giving you trouble, Marnie?" asked Benny. She told him that Cal was fine. He was just looking around to see how much the town had changed. Benny just gave her a nod and turned to Cal and said, "I'm watching you, young man." Cal assured him he meant no harm and told him that he had changed from how he used to be. Marnie and Cal saw each other a lot over the next several months, and the two became very close. They had become the town's new it couple. Everyone talked about their relationship and how all the people, those two could end up together. Him and his father had done so much to Halloween Town, and she had always been the one to defeat them. And now she was dating a Calabar? But the two of them didn't listen to a word anyone else had to say. Even Marnie's family was accepting of Cal into their circle, though Dylan still had his doubts for a long time. Of all the Cromwells, Gwen was the most shocked by the relationship. It wasn't because of what he had done. She could tell he had changed. It was the fact that his father and her had dated when they were younger, and now their children were together. She told them that Aggie would have been extremely happy for them. Mortals and creatures reunited, and now old enemies have laid down their hatred and differences to each other and became more than just friends, but lovers. She would see this as a fulfillment of some sort of prophecy. Having heard that and knowing that they all approve, Cal turned to Marnie in front of everyone and dropped to one knee. Marnie stood in shock as she realized what he was doing. He then took out a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a small ring with an orange stone shaped like a jack-o'-lantern. Marnie Piper, we have had an amazing time together these last few months. I know I have done a lot of wrong in my past, but if you were to be by my side, I feel I could continue to grow into a better man. You make me want to be the best I can be for everyone. I love you. Will you marry me? Everyone stood in stunned silence as they waited for Marnie to answer him. She stood quietly for what felt like an eternity to Cal before she answered. I can't believe you're asking this in front of my whole family, she told him. He told her there was no better place to ask. Then Gwen and Sophie shouted in excitement, wanting to know her answer. Marnie looked back at Cal for a second, still on his knee with the ring in hand. She stammered. Yes, I'll marry you. Everyone cheered as Cal stood up and kissed Marnie and slipped the ring on her hand. Never in a million years did she ever expect to fall in love with a person like Cal. And this is kind of funny because if you don't know, Kimberly J. Brown, who plays Marnie in the movies, and the actor who played Cal in Halloween Town 2, Calabar's Revenge, actually are getting married in real life. And I wrote this story like this before they even started dating again. Is when I started this book. They started dating again while I was finishing up this book, and they just got engaged a few months ago. Well, after I finished this book, so I kind of created my own little prophecy in a way, I guess you could say. But yeah, Marnie and Cal actually are getting married in real life. So I just had to throw that in there because it's a fun little tidbit I just love is coming true. Never in a million years did she ever expect to fall in love with some person like Cal. Sure, she had a crush on him from the first moment she saw him at the Halloween party so many years ago. They had been through so much, but she had come to really trust him in recent months. He really was a whole new man. And while these thoughts swirled in her mind, her mother and sister were already beginning to plan the wedding. Sophie was already offering to officiate the wedding as mayor. Gwen rushed to get her wedding dress for Marnie to use. Dylan wasn't quite sure what to think of their engagement. He knew Cal was much better than he used to be, but he still couldn't help but wonder, what if? He pulled Cal aside and told him that if he did anything to hurt his sister, he would do more to him than just the council had done when they banished him from Halloween Town. Cal reassured him that he only had the best of intentions. It would never do anything to hurt Marnie or any of her family. For the next year, they planned their wedding down to the last detail. Marnie and her mother's dress ready to go, and agreed to let Sophie officiate the ceremony. Everyone in town had been congratulating the two of them and expressed how much they would love to come to the wedding. Because of how many were saying the same thing and how much she had done for Halloween Town over the years, the two of them agreed to hold the ceremony in front of the giant jack-o'-lantern in front of the whole town. Cal asked Dylan to be his best man. Luke and Ethan were his groomsmen. Meanwhile, Marnie wanted her sister to be her maid of honor, but since she was officiating, she asked her mother. Gwen happily accepted. She asked her genie friend from college, Anissa, and Luke's wife, Natalie, the troll that had gone to the high school exchange program, to be her bridesmaids. Finally, the day had come. Both him and Marnie. I'm going to change that to Cal and Marnie. Both Cal and... Why is there a giant Z in there? Both Cal and Marnie had been put into two different offices inside City Hall in order to get ready. Cal was so nervous he felt he was going to throw up. Meanwhile, Marnie was experiencing cold feet. "I can't do this," she said, pacing around the room. What if he... Gwen cut her off and reassured her that nothing was going to happen. She reminded Marnie how great she looked in her dress, and how proud Grandma Aggie would have been to see this day. Somehow they all knew Aggie was there with them. Sophie headed to her office to get ready to perform the ceremony, and Gwen headed outside to make sure everything was ready to go. As they left, Marnie began to softly speak to Aggie. "Grandma, I wish you were here to tell me what I'm doing. To tell me I'm doing the right thing by marrying Cal." It was then she heard Aggie whisper what she had first told her about magic. "It's really quite easy. You have to want something, then let yourself have it." Marnie knew she really did want to marry Cal, and now she had to let herself walk down the aisle. With that, she thanked her grandma and prepared to head outside. It was then she heard the music begin to play, and she knew the time had come. Everyone was outside, and she now prepared to walk down the aisle alone. Then she felt a hand place itself on her lower back. She turned to see her high school principal, Mr. Flanagan. "You know how fond I was of your grandmother," he told her. "I couldn't just let you walk down the aisle alone. I hope this is okay." Why did it do that again? That's the second one I've seen. Marnie smiled and took his arm as they headed out the front door. Outside, the whole town had gathered in front of City Hall to see the historic moment where old foes were joined in marriage. The mortals who had lived in town gathered on Cal's side, while all of the creatures of Halloween Town were gathered on Marnie's side. Even grumpy old Gort put on the best suit he had and joined the crowd. The suit was about a size too small, and nothing matched anything else. It was obvious a mix of what had been lost. There were so many familiar faces in the crowd, so many people Marnie had helped at one point or another. All of the memories came flooding back to her mind, overwhelming her. Tears began to fill her eyes as she still has supported her and her family. As she looked around the crowds, her eyes caught sight of Cal standing in front of the giant jack-o'-lantern at the heart of town. Marnie and Cal chose that spot to get married because of its significance. There was no better place to join two hearts in marriage than at the heart of Halloween Town itself. As Marnie began to walk down the steps of City Hall, the crowds parted, creating a path straight to Cal and the altar. All eyes of Halloween Town were on her at this moment, and though she had done so much for the community, this time it was different. She felt anxious. It was almost as if she could hear their thoughts, and for the first time in years, she felt like an outsider in her own town. For a moment she thought of turning around, but she gathered all of her strength and continued on. Slowly she made her way to Cal, keeping her eyes on him the whole time and not looking around. She thought that if she had lost focus on him, everything else would fall apart. A little past halfway, she stopped. Cal got nervous as he watched her, nervous of what she was about to do. He was ready to follow after her. However, she just took a deep breath and kept on walking. Seeing her move again, he calmed and gave her a supportive smile. Eventually, Marnie reached the altar. Cal gave her a smile and asked, "Are you okay?" She told him yes, and that it was just nerves. He nodded in agreement, having had the same nerves and nervous thoughts. They took each other's hands and turned to look at Sophie. God damn it, fucking scammers, shut up. Man, they're out of control today. Look at Sophie. She gave them both a smile, never expecting to be the one to officiate her own sister's wedding. Book in hand, she looked around. Gwen and Anissa stood next to Marnie, Dylan and Luke next to Cal. Everyone watched on as she prepared to begin, as Marnie and Cal locked eyes with each other. Silently, they stood and listened to Sophie speak. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join together Marnie and Cal. The two of them have had an interesting past, to say the least, but they have found each other in a new light. Today, with the support of their family and the whole community watching, they pledge to be beside each other throughout whatever may come. I understand both of you have chosen to speak from the heart. Marnie, you may begin. And with that, Marnie took a deep breath and began. Cal, we first met when we were teenagers, and at that point we did not get along. Then years later you resurfaced and we had issues again. Only this time you actually stepped up and helped to protect me when there was nobody else around. Without you, I could not have defeated the Mayor Hoodwinkle, and helped to relocate Halloween Town back to the mortal world. Getting to know a whole new you and seeing the great man you can be, I have never been more in love with anyone. I promise to stay by your side and support you for as long as you will have me. Together, we can create a better life for ourselves and our community. I have never been happier than I am at this moment. With a smile, Cal began to say what he felt. It's no secret to anyone here the wrongs I have made. I am deeply regretful of those actions, but I am thankful you have seen past those and have gotten to know the real me. Now, my only agenda is to spend the rest of my life showing you how amazing you are. You have saved me just as you have done for this town so many times. I can never repay you for the kindness and the love you each have given me. But I promise to stand at your side and support you. Support anything you wish to do for as long as you would let me. Let's make a better life for ourselves and others as we grow together. I will love you from now until the end of time. After finishing, they turned back to Sophie, who asked for objections. Nobody raised their hands to object, so they turned back to Marnie and Cal. She turned back to Marnie and Cal. Then she said, "With the power invested in me by the city of Halloween Town, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Excuse me. Cal then lifted Marnie's veil and kissed. And they kissed. Everyone cheered and began to cast celebration spells, which showered the happy couple in magical sparks. Marnie and Cal held each other's hands as they rushed through the crowd to Benny and his taxi. Giving one last wave, they climbed in and headed off to their honeymoon. The end. That is the official end of my story. I did find a few areas in there where I need to go back and do a little bit of editing, but I will do that on my own time. But there. That is Goodbye Halloween Town. I said if you've ever seen any of the Halloween Town movies, you'll probably get a lot of the references that I made in there. If you haven't seen them, you probably catch them tonight. They've been showing all 4 films on endless loop on YouTube on a live stream. So you could probably, if you don't have Disney Plus, you can go on YouTube and watch all 4 of them. You'll see all of the references I made. I've also got a trivia section that I've written for the book that has, let's see, 1, 2, 3. It has 5 different sections, one for each of the 4 films, and then a miscellaneous section, and then each section has 5 of its own questions, which, like, for the original Halloween Town, you have the questions of, in what town was Halloween Town filmed? Of course, the answer is St. Helens, Oregon. And then question 2 is, who is older, Marnie or Dylan? It's actually Marnie. What was Marnie's father's name? His real name was William Piper. In question 4, you have to see the original Halloween Town to know this answer, but what creature is called Daddy by a mortal child? And it was Frankenstein's monster. He talks about that on the bus. What was used to defeat Calabar? That was Merlin's talisman. And then there's questions from Halloween Town 2, Return to Halloween Town High. And then there's miscellaneous questions and everything. There's one way to get the ship known. Make the book about a ship. Give somebody some interest to go look up the real ship and see what happened. That's a way to get people interested. It's a good idea. But anyway, that is my book. And now that I am done, it's been a little over 2 hours again, I will call it a day, and I will be back for the next live this coming Saturday again at my regular times, about typically somewhere around 3 o'clock Central Time. So, as I say every week, like and subscribe here on YouTube so you know when I go live. If you're watching this after it's done, whatever, follow me on TikTok and like Titanic Truths on Facebook. And I said, Saturday we will get back to regular topics on Titanic and other stuff. Just for Halloween, I wanted to do something a little different. So I will see you all Saturday.